This and That and What the Fuck Else, episode 102. In this one I will be talking mostly about Russia, the UK, Ukraine, and there's a snippet about the Wagner military group. Things are looking tense in Europe. Looks like the European Union and the Americans are spoiling for a fucking fight in Kosovo, and Serbia is on the edge, and they are ganging up on Serbia for the simple reason that Serbia didn't want to play their stupid games with Russia. The Serbian president is looking out for his people, but that Europeans, under the instigation from the US and NATO, are busy spoiling for a fight there. I don't know what the fuck is going on with them. And then it was explosive, this thing from Merkel. She was obviously deliberately throwing the West under the bus with her statements about the fact that there was never plans to implement the Minsk agreements. That should worry us. Now let's start this one off with art again. If you look at this image, you will see it's a black and white image, and in a photographic competition this thing will be entered either in the category street photography or glamour photography. I like the image, I like the composition, and for those that are not so deep into these things, what makes this image very attractive is if you look at the image, you can clearly see that the girl is walking from the right into the left. And this is important when you do photographs like this with people. You must leave a room where they can move into. And yeah, I like this shot. And then we get to Russia. Now this is just a little bit of history about Russia. How long did it take to get from Moscow to St. Petersburg through the centuries? Russian Railways recently announced a new speed train railway between Moscow and St. Petersburg will be launched by late 2027. The journey is expected to take just 2.5 hours in total, with an estimated 2 hours 15 minutes ride time without stops. As of today, the project is going to break a record in terms of the duration of the journey between the two capitals. So how long did it take to travel from the northern capital, Moscow, to Moscow, and vice versa in the different epochs? And then you can see there, it's got the different years and the time that it took to get there. Then there's this. Russia is an island of hope for a brighter future. Americans are saying that the world is changing. The values that have become the foundation of the Western world are destructive and are against humanity. In fact, it is Russia that is emerging as a new Christian civilization, where society is built on family values, on truth and on respect. More and more people around the world are beginning to understand this and want their children to grow up in this society. And I have spoken about it many times and mentioned it many times. But it seems like the rest of the Western world is waking up to it. And I have spoken about this previously. Russian MPs approve complete ban on LGBTQ propaganda. The new legislation has been unanimously supported by members of the State Duma, the lower house of the country's parliament. And then there is this. I did a Skidmark about this and I used the photographs in there. This is just the post as it appeared. And this is the children bringing flowers to the veterans in Russia. Thanks to those who fought for the fact that we are alive and we live. Thanks to our elders having fought half of Europe. And those who gave their lives, thanks for our freedom. Thank you, veterans. Thank you, our heroes. Great, I like that. And then another burner from Putin. Vladimir Putin just said, "We don't want this for Russia. The USA openly supports Satanism, teaching young kids perversions and mutilation surgery to change genders." And I am 100% with him on that. This is a man that you can trust to be your president. Now this is something very interesting. McDonald's pulled out of Russia, and a Russian guy bought McDonald's. And at McDonald's you usually get toys with some of the meals for the kids. As a gift, every kids combo set will have one of 14 exclusive books with various puzzles and mazes by the Clever Publishing House. The restaurant chain said, adding the books of this kind contribute to the development of memory, logic, and attention span of children. The McDonald's Happy Meal usually comes with a toy. I like that. The Russians are really taking care of their children. And then this one, I saw this and I couldn't help, I had to laugh. Anti-war activists who flee Russia find detention, not freedom, in the US. Thousands of Russians are crossing the US southern border to claim asylum. Many are ending up in immigration prison. "I left Russia for a place just like Russia," said one. And I had to laugh. And then we get to the sanctions. EU planning sanctions on Russia's mining sector. The European Commission plans to impose a ban on new investment in Russia's mining industry as part of a new package of sanctions, the Financial Times reported. Yet exceptions will be made for certain types of products. EU members are expected to discuss the new sanctions in the next few days. I cannot understand that EU. Their economy is in the sewer and it is going down fast, and yet they keep on doing stupid things like this. So European operations cannot invest in Russia. I don't know why the European citizens are taking all that shit from that people. And then we get to the UK. Army's ammunition would last for only a week of war. The British military experts have concluded that the British Army would run out of ammunition in a week if it was forced to fight a conflict like the war in Ukraine. And I've spoken about this many times in the past, and I have mentioned this and discussed it, and there were people that took me on about it, and here you have it now. And then there's this piece from history. It was published on 2nd February 1835. Lord Macaulay. "I have travelled across the length and breadth of Africa, and I have not seen one person who is a beggar, who is a thief. Such wealth I have seen in this country, such high moral values, people of such caliber, that I do not think we would ever conquer this country unless we break the very backbone of this nation, which is her spiritual and cultural heritage, and therefore I propose that we replace her old and ancient education system, her culture, for if the Africans think that all that is foreign and English is good and greater than their own, they will lose their self-esteem, their native culture, and they will become what we want them, a truly dominated nation." Scary shit, but that is the thing. And as I said, look at the publishing date, 1835. More from the UK. I got this message from one of my followers. "I think we are in serious trouble in the UK. This is the 7th child that has died this week from strep A. Please keep an eye on kids in the family for symptoms, as I think something bigger going on here, like another lab leak, as they've been working on a vaccine for strep A." It was an article that was in the Express. Strep A infection kills 12-year-old for the first time in a new wave. There's issues with that stuff, and I've seen many posts about it. A captured Ukrainian commando talks about his military training in Great Britain that apparently was a huge waste of time. and it was a video. I just made a few clips. I made this clip. In those conditions that we were in, not at all, and the other stuff we were tormented with at a training facility for 3 months, like digging trenches or running in 2s or 3s, who could find useful in an open field? It was a nothing burger. There you have it. And then we're in the Ukraine, and look at this rural cemetery. Another rural cemetery of the destroyed AFU soldiers in the Ternopil region. And then one of the Ukrainian officials came out and said the people must stop putting Ukraine flags on the graves because it makes it look like there's a lot more. Well, they're trying to hide it from their own people. And then we've got this. Banned all opposition parties, bans churches. Who were you assholes who were recently calling this fucker the leader of the greatest democracy on earth? Very valid question, and I see he's the person of the year 4 times. I cannot understand what the fuck is going on with the West. And then there's this from the Huffington Post. Ukraine orphanages feeder for child trafficking. Governments, faith-based groups and churches, aid agencies and volunteer tourists who donate cash and goods to orphanages or build and refurbish children's homes and other institutions may be inadvertently funding human trafficking. That is a horror story. And there's many reports about that. Apparently, some British pedophiles were scooping up children in Poland. Now listen to this. This could have been a what the fuck. Deputy of the Ukrainian Rada, with the face of an apartment thief, David Arakamia, said that Ukraine is ready to provide security guarantees to Russia. But for this you need to pay reparations and surrender all your nuclear weapons. What a fucking joke. And more. Now these are photographs from the residents of Kiev in the underground stations of the metro. Do those people know that Donbass was being bombed during 8 years, while Poroshenko was bragging about Russian children to live in basements? Never forget, the war started in 2014. And that is something that the West don't want to publish, don't want to know. But they want us to feel sorry for those Kiev residents. And then this from the Cheboreki man. HIMARS systems sent to Ukraine are loaded with crippleware. Even if Ukraine could find long-range missiles from alternative sources, the launchers won't allow Russians targets. What? The US doesn't trust Ukraine? And then we've got this about the power grid. One idiosyncrasy about Ukraine's grid in the Russian air campaign is the fact that Ukraine entered this war with a huge power surplus. The Ukrainian grid was built by the USSR to power a heavily industrialized region of over 50 million people. After the fall of the USSR, Ukraine began to depopulate and deindustrialize, and this process was accelerated by the war. So instead of a highly industrial nation of 50 million, it's an economically ruined country of perhaps 30 to 35 million. That leaves a ton of excess power. Incidentally, this is the unpleasant reality of Ukraine. Soviet Ukraine was the USSR's most economically developed region and the beneficiary of enormous state investment. The Ukrainian regime turned it into the worst performing post-Soviet economy. That is sad. Not to mention that Ukraine started in 91 with zero foreign debt. Russia took entire USSR debt onto itself. Before this war, Ukraine was 100 billion in debt and the poorest country in Europe. Quite an achievement. And these are also facts that the Western media will never publish. And then look at this image. This is cemetery prepared for the Ukrainian soldiers. Look at that. 100 graves per block. And here on this photograph you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 16, 17, 18, 22 blocks. Guys, that Ukrainian regime is lying to the people and lying to the world. And I have read reports that they don't collect their dead soldiers on the front. They leave them in the trenches. And the Russian commanders give them a ceasefire for 12 hours or something like that for them to collect their dead and wounded. They don't do it. They leave them. And I've read other articles where the Ukrainian people are claiming that the Russians give them time to go and collect the dead, but the Ukrainians don't go and do it, because if they are officially dead, the Ukraine government needs to pay compensation to the families, and they don't want to pay that compensation. We are looking at a fucking evil regime here. Let me get this from Paul Gossard. Our continued support of this war in Ukraine is immoral. The deaths continue, and Ukraine, in addition to comprising Nazi regiments, has become an authoritarian regime not worthy of any support. I support peace talks, not death and destruction, not bombing churches. And you should have seen the responses on this tweet. It is scary, those Americans, I don't know, they've lost their way. And then we get to this thing about the Wagner group, and it is after EU has decided to declare them a terrorist organization. And Prigozhin is the owner of that group. We have never crossed the limits of what is permitted. We have never oppressed the civilian population. We have always saved the oppressed from violence. We have never fallen under any of the categories of a terrorist organization. We have not crossed and are not going to cross the laws of morality. But the West has decided that they are the judges of what is moral. And they will not make a mention of the millions of people that they're killing in the Middle East, the millions that are suffering in Yemen, in Afghanistan, in Syria. They don't want to talk about that. And now they're planning another fuck up in Kosovo. Watch, keep your eyes open for that. But there is a little bit of a problem for them. Russia has said that they support Serbia. So who knows? I don't know whether the Russians will send soldiers in there or just a few Iskandars. And then we get to that what a fuck. And this is just something to laugh about. In this time, everybody has got a fucking story about what you must eat and not eat. You will look at this and you will laugh. The waitress says, "How did you find your steak, sir?" And he replies, "I just looked next to the potatoes and there it was." And on that note, please give me a like, subscribe, and share the thing. And I have done a little bit of investigation that is quite clear. My stuff are being shadow banned and on this channel, and I can do absolutely fuck all about it. The only thing that I can ask is that you guys share the stuff, because from YouTube side I'm not going to get anything. And in any case, I do this because I like it, and I do it because I feel I can bring some value to people that don't have the time to do all the research that I do. And as you can see, I'm sitting here in the dark, but that's also okay. I have made peace with that. This is our lives, and we have to live it. Have a great evening.